Okay, here we are, Seaglide video number 1. This is a little bit of instruction about how to build the first part. That's the power supply and limit switch. So you should be following along on the document. Go to seaglide.org and then go to power supply and limit switch under the build instructions. So go to seaglide.org, go to the build instructions, power supply and limit switch, pull up that document, and we're going to build the thing that you see in that first picture there with the battery and the battery snap and all the rest of it. So the things that you need to gather up out of your kit, most of them are right here in this bag. Right, so get out the bag. Make sure you're careful when you're opening up the bag, because there are a bunch of little screws and stuff in there. You don't want those to spill out, but you want to get out the specific parts that we're going to need. And those specific parts are listed on, let's see, where's that page? That page is on page 1. So right on page 1, there's a list of parts, and the first one is the battery snap connector. That's this thing. The second one is the lithium battery. You don't really need the battery just yet, but it's the 9-volt battery. You don't need to take it out yet. The next one is the push button power switch, which is this guy right here. Right? And then there's the protection diode, which is this. And notice that it's kind of a black cylinder thing with a little gray stripe on it. You also have a resistor in there that's going to be blue, so you want to make sure you get the black one. And the power supply plug, and that's this thing right here. It's in a little bag. It's probably not inside this bag, it's probably inside the box. So get all of those things ready to go. Okay, once you have all your supplies ready, the first thing that the instructions ask you to do is to cut your battery strap in half. Right, so to cut this halfway through, so right about here. You don't have to measure it exactly, just give yourself about that much room. Now if you've never soldered before, if you've never cut wires before, you might want to practice out here on some of this material out here to make sure that you can do it the right way. So what I'd suggest is you practice not only cutting but also stripping the wires out here. And the way you cut it, you're going to use your wire cutter. Everybody's got one of these right here where it says wire cutter, and you just put the wires right in there. You can do them both at the same time, or you can do them one at a time if you want, and then squeeze. Right, you squeeze and those will fly right off there. Now I already cut mine, so I'm going to show you how to do it on this one right here. You just put that right in there and squeeze hard, and it'll cut right through it. You have to squeeze really hard to get through the whole wire. If you have a pair of scissors, these wires are pretty easy to cut with a pair of scissors as well. So if you prefer to use a pair of scissors, go ahead and do that. Once you get them cut, then you have to strip them. Now stripping wires is a little bit tricky. When you strip a wire, what you're trying to do is take the insulation off. So the insulation is just that red part, right? And we're going to be left with the wires underneath, right? So this wire stripper that you have here also has a set of wire strippers on here. And if you squeeze them real tight, you notice that there are different size holes in there. So those different size holes correspond to different size wires. And the one that you have is probably the smallest one, right? So you're going to stick it right in there. But you want to open it up a little bit, stick it right where that round spot is there, squeeze it real hard, and then pull. That didn't come off easily, so take some practice to do. Put it right around the hole there and squeeze it. And then eventually you're going to be able to get that off of there. Right? So if you've never done this before, what I'm going to suggest is that you take this long piece here, right? Remember, we only really want half of it, but I want you to practice stripping the wires all the way out here, right? Just practice stripping them so you make sure when it comes time to do it on the one that you want to keep, that you're good at it, right? So practice a little bit, practice stripping the wires. Once you have the wires stripped, you can move on to the next part. So the next part is going to be to cut these wires in half and then strip the insulation off of them. Now once again, you're going to use the same method of stripping the wires, but these wires are fatter, right? They're thicker wires, so you have to use a bigger part of your wire stripper here, right? So I'm going to put this in here. I'm just going to practice with it for a second to make sure that I can do it. Make sure I've got the right one. Right? Because once you cut it in half and you're ready to go, you don't have the opportunity to screw it up anymore. So squeeze it there. These are kind of hard to strip. There you go. So I'm able to do that. So now that I know that I can do that, I practiced it a little bit, I know how to do it, I'm going to go ahead and cut these off about halfway. Once again, it's about I can measure it exactly here, so that's 4 inches, so I'm going to cut about 2 inches off of it. I'm going to give myself a little bit more to work with, right? So I'm only going to cut about 1.5 inches off of it, just because I might need some of that extra to play around with. So I'm going to put it right here, again in the cutting part, and we'll do them one at a time. Put it right here in the cutting part of my wire cutter here, and I'm going to squeeze it, and there it goes. And that's cut off, and then I'm going to cut the other one off in the same spot. Put it right here, put it in my wire cutter, squeeze it, there it goes. Now I got my pigtail cut off of that thing. And I'm going to strip that wire back about 1/4 of an inch. Right. Squeeze it, pull, squeeze it, and pull. Now you want to be careful when you're cutting these fatter wires that you don't use the hole that's too small, otherwise you'll cut the wire. Right? So you don't want to do that. Squeeze it and pull. Squeeze it and pull. So you know, about 1/4 of an inch off of each one. And there we go, and you might clean them up a little bit, just twist them around a little bit together. And there you go, now I got those cut off.